Yeah.
Okay, call to order the committee of the whole meeting Tuesday, September 16th. 8:01. Roll call, please, Kim.
Rhoda,
Here.
Wright,
Here.
Mead,
Here.
Babcock,
Here.
Black,
Here.
Simon,
Here.
Gustafson. Here.
Okay, approval of the minutes, approval of the minutes for the meeting of the committee of the whole from September 2nd, 2025. So move.
Second.
John, thanks, Justin. Vote please, Kim.
Simon,
Yes.
Black,
Yes.
Babcock,
Yes.
Mead,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Rhoda.
Yes.
Thank you.
First chance public comment. One more chance out of the meeting. Okay, number 2, presentation of the street study completed by Fair Grant Engineering and Environmental, and Tyler is here tonight.
Yes, hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks Brandon for giving me your seat. For those I haven't met, I'm Tyler Nelson with Fairgram. With Brandon's help, we kind of piloted this street study. If you recall earlier, it's probably this spring, I believe. We entered into an agreement with the village to enact and work with them to put together a 5-year capital improvement program. Kind of step one of that process was the street study. This has not been done in the village since I believe it was 2014. Essentially involves taking just a holistic look at every one of the village's streets and kind of giving them some rankings and developing some metrics to help guide now that can feed into the capital improvement program. So I believe you've all been provided copies of the report. I just had kind of a brief presentation here to step through, just to highlight a few items, and I'll try to be brief, and then we can open it up for any questions or clarifications that you have. So. I think that's full. Yeah, for the next one. Please, thank you. So the objective of the street study, right? This is inspecting the village of Roscoe's street network to establish its current conditions, establishing metrics then that we can use to kind of a data-driven approach to developing a maintenance plan for the village's streets. How can we improve them? In terms of how we collect it, there's not a lot of rocket science to it. It's essentially driving all 120 miles of the village's streets. We follow the same method that we did in 2014, so we can provide some synergy to where the numbers were before and be able to compare that. So earlier this summer, we used 2 Fairground staff members. We used the same staff members to drive every street so that there was no change in opinion of what they were seeing versus what somebody else was seeing. Under Brandon's guidance, were you involved with the 2014 study?
I was not.
You were not, but it was right before you came on board. But Brandon was very familiar with that study and the methods used to gather the data. So Brandon was able to kind of look over their shoulder because they were younger staff members, and the numbers he was coming up with and they were coming up with really didn't differ at all. So we were able to train them up on as they're driving, they're looking right for rideability conditions of the streets. How does it feel as they're driving over it? Surface defects and deformations, potholes, cracking, things of that nature. And I'll get to the form here in a bit. And I know there's a form that we provided, a raw data form in the street study as well for how they rank things. And they're looking right for the density of the defects and the amount, and giving that numbers and utilizing the simple arithmetic that's on the form. We can rank a street of a number from 0 to 100. 100 being good, 0 being bad, and it's called a pavement condition rating, PCR. We use that term frequently here. It's logical to think of things. We think of things often in life as 100 being good, 0 being bad. So it's just an easy scale to use to provide, a good snapshot of the condition of a road. So we could assign a PCR value to each segment of street throughout the village. In addition, something we did a little different from the last street study, while we were driving these streets and collecting all this information on the pavement service, We also were able to obtain additional information that can be used for the village in the future, such as, photo documentation of all the streets at the time. So, that can supplement, being able to see exactly what we were looking at. Verification of cross-sectional elements, right, with a curb, was there sidewalk, was there drainage concerns, was there storm sewer, ditch grading, things of that nature, and presence of public water service, sanitary sewer service. I know in the village, there's still some areas that don't have public water, public sewer. Might ask, well, what does that have to do with the street study? Well, let's say, right, you're planning on improving a street that's falling apart here in a couple of years. And they don't have any public sewer or public water. It might be worth reaching out to North Park Public Water or Four River Sanitation to see, hey, do you have a project on the books, right? That's gonna bring public sewer, public water to this street. So you're not repaving it, and then they're coming a few years later and ripping that right back up again. The other benefit of getting that information while we were out driving the streets is this information would be able then to be uploaded into the Winch's database for the village. And so that would be, available for the public, for developers, whoever, to be able to tell, you could click on a road center line and tell what condition this road kind of in. One of these cross-sectional elements doesn't have. So I will note, we did exclude a few streets from this study. We focused on the village's residential streets. So we excluded Main, Love, Willowbrook, Chestnut, McDonald, right? Those are streets that, if they're gonna be improved, are probably larger projects that you're gonna seek some sort of state, maybe federal grant funding for, as opposed to just local village funds. So those were excluded from here to not kind of skew that data. So go on to the next one, please, Joe. So these are, and I think this is in further detail in Appendix A of your street study, but these are just some of the pavement deterioration types we're looking for, and our inspectors were looking for when they're out driving the streets. Whether it's raveling, flushing or streaking, potholes, edge cracking, manholes and catch basin surface defects. Oftentimes you'll see cracking right around a manhole surface from that dynamic load of a vehicle driving over that rim. Rippling or shoving or running of the wheel pads. Utility trenches, right? Did the utility company come in and open up the pavement and put more joints in there? Longitudinal cracking, transverse cracking, map cracking, alligator cracking. Did we see any areas of poor drainage that we could note? One of the biggest items that fails pavements prematurely is poor drainage, right? Because it never dries out and the water just continues seeping down, ruining the base, and eventually that percolates back up to the surface. So raveling is when like the surface of the road kind of like ripples up. And it can be caused by segregation of the asphalt mix being put down. It can be caused by temperature constraints from their placing it. So just a method of failure that you can see over time. Typically, it's having something to do with mix quality of so we get to the PCR values of 0 to 100 and just kind of general industry standard, right? We're establishing about a value of 90 to 100. You're looking at, that's a pretty good pavement. That's a pavement that you're probably not going to get any complaints about. A fair pavement is between like an 80 to 89 number on this metric scale. Maybe it's starting to show a little cracking. It's starting to show a fair pavement. Now we're getting to the point where you're starting to see significant more cracking, some rideability concerns. That's in a value around 65 to 79, and then you consider pretty much anything below 65 to be poor or just a failed pavement. That's likely going to need significant investment to improve. So step you through here quick, and I know it's probably kind of hard to see, but there are examples of these forms in the in Appendix E of the street study report, but just kind of wanted to take you through, like, what the number in talking these numbers and poor and fair, and to just kind of give you a visual representation. So here's an example of a poor pavement. You can see how things were ranked, how the numbers were added up, and I think we all can agree that's a fairly poor pavement, right? That's Windflower Way, that's a PCR of 58. So we would deem that, right, a failed pavement. It's probably gonna take a reconstruction to bring that, that's long thoughts. That's pretty much what we're looking for as a poor condition. Next slide is showing you kind of fair condition pavement. And I attached the specific inspection report next to these pictures in your slides. I know it's hard to see, but we can certainly get you more information if you need it. But right, so here you're seeing significant alligator cracking. You're seeing some rutting. You're seeing some potholes. This might be a candidate for a resurfacing, or maybe we're taking off the top couple inches of pavement and we're repaving to improve that rideability. Maybe the base hasn't failed like the previous pavement, but getting to the end of this useful life as well. That was PCR 73 right there. The next slide shows you a good condition pavement. This is an 85, right? You're maybe starting to see a few surface defects just over time. Probably not getting any huge rideability concerns or complaints from people on this, but cracks are starting to show. The base is starting to reflect up. Yeah, this has some years of its life, but it might be a candidate for, and we'll kind of get into some of these pavement preservation methods later, but maybe a candidate for some crack sealing or something along that nature to seal up those cracks that are first starting to appear so they don't grow greater and lead to more failure. And last one here is, right, a great condition. This is a PCR of 100. This is a recently repaved road. Everything looks tight. You don't really see any defects there. You don't see any rutting. So this one was given 100. Any of the streets like the ones that we repaved this year, typically will automatically give those 100, and then obviously they'll start to degrade over time. But
2024, I believe.
2024. So it just gives you some visual representation of these numbers we want we're looking at. So next slide, and this is Appendix D in your report, shows you just a visual map, color coded for the various PCRs by range. There's also one of the appendices has all this data, all these streets organized alphabetically. So if you're looking for a specific street and see what it ranked at, you can use that table to search for it. Note that we found from the data gathering that about 12.3% of the roads by length in the village have a PCR of 64 or less. So
How many again?
12.3% village streets have what we would classify as PCR pavement. The overall, and I know this is on a later slide, but I'll just say here the current overall PCR of the village. So everything together is an 84 currently. So not terrible. It's actually not bad, all things considered, but those 12.3% are kind of bringing that number down. So on the next slide, the second portion then of the street study is a maintenance recommendation, right? What kind of pavement preservation plan could the village start to look at to improve your overall PCR? And there's several types of construction that you can do that all kind of work holistically to preserve your pavement surfaces. Obviously everybody thinks of the reconstruction, right? Anything less than 65, you're considering a full reconstruction. You're removing everything. Pavement, probably rebuilding your base. And obviously that's the most expensive way to go. But some of these pavements, that's the only level that you could do to bring that back, right? So we're considering anything poor probably needs a reconstruction. For a fair pavement, that was that previous slide I showed to kind of give you a visual representation, right? We're looking at like a mill and overlay. So that's what you typically would call street resurfacing. You're pulling off 1.5 inches, 2 inches, 3 inches of the surface pavement, right? You maybe don't have too much base failure, but you're trying to improve that rideability. We're considering for the fair pavements that would be, an appropriate maintenance type to use. When you get to the good, right, it may not look bad. You may not be getting complaints on it, but there are techniques you can use to lengthen the life of that pavement, even though it's in good condition now. And that's what we call a service rejuvenation. They've been doing this in Rockford more and more with their streets about 3 to 5 years after they resurface them. They've been doing, and essentially it's almost like think of seal coating your driveway, right? It's similar to that. And sometimes they'll even use like a sand that kind of fills in some of those voids, protects from moisture getting down below. It's more, as you can see by the dollars up there, it's more cost effective way. And even though the pavement looks good and you're not getting a huge amount of cracking, a little bit of money spent on that can maybe kick that where you're maybe looking at needing to resurface a street every 12 to 15 years. Maybe you get an extra 5 years out of that, right? So you're not having to touch that street now for another 20 by putting a little bit of money into the service rejuvenation. And then for the streets above 90, it may not seem like you need to spend too much in them, but we usually recommend doing some type of crack filling or sealing. This is what you'll see on streets where you see a lot of those circuitous black streaks. That's what they're doing. They're taking those surface cracks are just appearing, routing them out, cleaning them, and then sealing them to kind of seal up that pavement a little more. Some people think it's like really ugly, but it helps a lot for pavements that are just repaved to extend that life. And you get a lot of bang for your buck with it too. One of the things to keep in mind when it comes to crack filling and sealing is there's not a lot of companies that do it. So what you'll see a lot of municipalities in this area do is kind of combine with other municipalities, put like a bid together so you get kind of a critical mass of quantity. And most of the companies are like central, they'll come up here and set up, for like a month, and they have a few villages, cities that they hit. And so you get some economy of scale out of that. So when you're looking for like a maintenance plan, you're looking for a combination of all these, right? If we picked off and said, okay, 12.3% of the streets in the village need to be reconstructed because they're poor, let's go do those first. With the village's funds, you're probably not getting very far. And in the meantime, all these other streets, you could be milling it over, you could be crack sealing, aren't getting addressed, right? And their PCR is continuing to slide. So when we looked at trying to recommend a 5-year maintenance plan we chose 5 years to provide some synergy with the CIP that we're working on with you. When we looked at that, we thought probably the best way to proceed would be, let's look at maybe doing one reconstruction a year and then take the remainder of the village's funds and spread it between milling and overlaying, crack sealing and things like that to stretch the dollars a little further. Because it'd be great to reconstruct every street that needs to be reconstructed. But by the time you got caught up on that, the other pavements that probably could have been limped along with the mill and overlay now are going to need to be reconstructed, right? So I think next slide has.
Are we doing crack filling house? Do you know how many? I know we have, but how many?
Yeah, I'm not sure. My understanding is the Public Works Department, they purchase the material based on their allotted budget for any given year. I would say we usually get at least a few roads done. For instance, like last year, I know all of Denali Heights Plat 1, which is just a couple of roadways, but that got done along with a handful of other roads. So it's usually about a handful of roads. Public Works does rent the equipment and do that themselves.
You'll see some of that in the budget when we get there, and then HMA, we put that where that is.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Just
hot mix asphalt. Yeah.
Just make sure.
Yeah. Apologies. So this is kind of the maintenance plan we came up with. Again, nothing's written in stone. This is just an idea that we had to try to stretch village's funds. Again, everything's color coded. I think exhibit B is in the street study report with this. And I believe we also have like a raw listing where you could locate the streets that we're recommending. So what we tried to do, right, is pick off maybe the worst one, year one, to do a recon, spread around, to do some mill and overlays on other streets, some crack sealing, and then, year two, do the same thing, right? Now we're doing another reconstruction, and then we're spreading it around. So this is a 5-year program that we have here. And I think on the next slide, so as I said earlier, the current overall PCR of the village is 84. So we looked at if the village's annual budget typically for road work is $500,000. So that was our base point we started from. and said, okay, we reconstruct one road, we build an overlay, do some crack sealing, things of that nature. We can get a little less than 8 miles of road rehabilitated, $500,000. We would project at the end of 5 years that the overall PCR for the village would end up at about 83.3. Now, it's making a few assumptions that you kind of have to over 5 years, but we're projecting that PCRs will decrease by a value of about 1.2. That's just kind of based on some historic knowledge and some industry standard. Obviously, there's a lot of caveats in there, right? We could have a terrible winter and then more roads could blow up. You know, based on freeze thaw cycles, which is one of the most dangerous things for road life is freeze thaw cycles. But if we're making that assumption, $500,000, we improve just shy of 8 miles of village streets. And your PCR essentially, we're projecting it'll remain essentially static. Just for this purpose of the exercise, we looked at, okay, if you doubled the funding for the roads or you tripled it, where we'd be at. You can see the numbers up there. You know, if you double it, now you are making some headway on your overall PCR. Now you're raising that up 3, almost 4 points. You know, if you triple it, and again, obviously all it takes is money, right, to do anything, right? You triple it, you know, you're getting close to 24 miles done. Now we're looking at the village's PCR is up into that, overall is up into that good range. So again, you just put this out there as, you know, and the projections are only as good as the assumptions you put into it, but we feel comfortable that, you know, this is a conservative decrease in PCR each year. So this gives you a snapshot of where the village's current roadway expenditures are at, and that you're keeping static, which isn't bad. But just gives you an idea of if you did increase your infrastructure funding on roads specifically, how you might be able to raise that overall PCR. So I think that was all I had. So anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to.
To get this, I know it's not on the digital, I just, we have
These
this.
are both, these will be for the public, they'll be on our board packet after tonight. For the board, they're in your board shared folder.
Okay, will it be on the link on the, for the public, so.
Correct, yes. For the public, it will be in the board, in the packet, and we'll we'll also have a page for it eventually too, but it will be in the board packet meeting for tonight's meeting.
So is there a point where after 5 years, I mean, it's become inelastic, I mean, at the point where you start going down 1.2 every year after 5 years, what would your assumption be after 10? I mean, are you gonna start seeing real deterioration? And where is that break point? Because I think that if you model this out over 10 years, it becomes pretty, if you're going at 1.2 a year, it gets down to 70%.
Yeah, the assumption that you typically operate at is absent any other improvements, so absent any crack sealing, absent any like surface rejuvenation or anything. A mill and overlay of a roadway gives you about 10 to 12 years. And then it's gonna need to be done again. Now, some places stretch it, I think, right near our office on North Second Street, they're got that all ripped up right now. I remember the last time that was repaved was 2004. So they got somehow got 20 years out of that, right? But they did a lot of crack sealing and things and patching and stuff to do that. So when a reconstruction, you're looking at, you would be, you theoretically should get 30 years out of it. So it becomes a game, right? Is how much do you, if you maybe allocate more funds to those lower dollar items, which I think some of you are aware, I worked for City of Rockford Public Works for a number of years. Just 15 years ago now. They never used to do any of this surface rejuvenation that you see now. They've started doing that to try to stretch dollars further because I think, as we're all aware, nothing's getting cheaper. Hot mix asphalt is very dependent on the price of oil. It's very volatile commodity. So municipalities are starting to see there's more value in doing some of this crack sealing, this service rejuvenation to try to stretch that 10 to 12 years for the resurface out to, can you get 15, can you get 17, or can you get 18? And then, right, and then your dollars go further. And so, does that answer?
Yeah, I
Question,
can,
someone?
I'm in healthcare, so it's, to me, it looks like preventative, right? Preventative, that's right, is, put somebody out, keep somebody out of the hospital, right? So you look at that type of thing, it's the question of what moves you make, where and how you address it, sometimes you get to the point where symptoms are too great, you have to, have surgery or something like that. So I think that's something that, we should look at is preventatively really be accurate in our preventative our portion of this. Is the list of, and I apologize, I guess there are a list of streets like you ranked on here, right? So
Yeah.
is there certain areas that are much worse than others?
I could speak to that just out of
Yeah.
memory.
Brandon probably.
Usually your larger, older subdivisions, so Sagewood subdivision has a lot of failing roads, that all went in roughly at the same time. Also developed in, sequential stages by plat. So then, you may have construction traffic driving over an already paved roadway to get to the next road that they're building. So in terms of neighborhoods, Sagewood is pretty bad. Chicory Ridge in the last 5 years, I know we've done some of those roads out there, but substantially, they're some of the lowest rated roads. And then before we did a few years ago, the downtown area, the downtown was probably roughly the next worst area. Some of the poor ratings, and not based on this study, but just from my past experience with the 2014 study, and then visually seeing them as driving them. Yeah, Sagewood, Chicory Ridge, prior to the improvements to the downtown area, and then it's really just kind of pockets at that point.
You guys factor in traffic flow or volume?
So,
But I mean, are we doing a study on the traffic?
well,
Is there a way to know?
so for the purposes of this study, and that's what I was talking about, we excluded, right, the collector level streets, those streets, these are residential streets. You wouldn't typically do traffic counts in here unless you were trying to warrant like a stop sign or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, I will say though, right, one of the things, you can look at too with a pavement preservation plan is, let's say one neighborhood is most of the streets in the neighborhood are failing and you want to take a targeted approach at repaving them as you go, right? It probably makes the most sense to start furthest in the subdivision, right? Knowing that the construction traffic and everything is gonna drive that one road coming out. And so, you kind of progress and end that way.
Because it would help preventatively if we had a better understanding of the traffic flow, that we know that there's a better chance that the higher volume roads are gonna break down sooner. But my biggest question is on Windflower. How did we get to that point to where it got to that point?
If lack of funding.
Only $500,000 a year.
Yeah, but I mean, that road's to the point, like, I don't know, when do you think the last time it would have been done?
Probably the first time it went in, if I
Yeah.
had to guess.
So I mean, that's where we don't want to get to that point, because then, once we get to that point, now we gotta do a whole complete restructure.
Yeah, and two of the items I look at, just looking at this picture, on its own right, I see two things, right? I see lack of any type of drainage, right? It doesn't look like there's really any ditches. There's definitely no storm sewer, right? And as we talked about earlier, it's surface water really accelerates pavement deterioration. The second thing I notice here is the shadows of the trees. Tree cover actually does that as well to streets, because as it shades, it won't dry out. Right, so lack of drainage and tree cover, I think you go in a lot of neighborhoods, some of the worst pavements you'll see is typically where there's a lot of tree cover, right? Because that pavement's not drying out, so it's giving that moisture more time to work on the base and then eventually failing it.
So would it be worth factoring in these variables too, as far as
Yeah.
the study?
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, and that's where, some of the data points that we collected as well was, right, presence of drainage issues. Is there storm sewer, is there, and yeah, that's something too that, right, can be driven in the CIP, we're gonna have a chapter on drainage improvements, right? do you look at maybe trying to solve a couple of these little drainage issues here, get this water off pavements and help preserve it? So a lot of factors that go into it.
I'd like to add that in the past, we go back to the 2014 study where streets were identified. The village had tried over the years to do this data-driven decision-making as to what streets to repair. And I think having the overall rating of 84 is a testament that we did do a lot, but it's like trying to catch a falling knife as you're doing those things, other things deteriorating. So if you look at what's in your documents, you'll see all the streets and their ratings. And every year, Brandon has come to the board with, here are options of equally bad streets. Which ones do you want to do? And so then that becomes your value judgment or your priority. So you may have 3 streets that are equally bad, but only $500,000 to spend. And it's your call as to which one you do this year. And you're absolutely right, trustee Bean. The other 2 you neglect will continue to deteriorate even further the next year. So in a perfect world, we'd like to do all of them. And then you mentioned the traffic study. I'm looking here, for example, at Edith Lane that is identified as a dead end street with no turnaround. And it has its rating of 69. So a dead end street, Edith Lane's not likely to have a whole lot of traffic, but if I lived on Edith Lane and my street is bad, I'd want the equal consideration that my dead end street is going to be repaired along with something that is more high traffic. And that becomes a value decision that the board.
Yeah, I
makes.
was thinking more traffic as far as it would, degrade the road is not so much as that the road needs, more attention because it gets more volume. But yeah, we just, the part in the pump, we just don't want any roads falling through the crack, right? Like that looks like Windflower was kind of dropped the ball on that.
Yeah.
That's all.
I mean, and yeah, unfortunately, that is it's a staff, when we recommend projects, we usually pull the 2014 street study. We tried to follow the recommendation plan. But my understanding is even prior to me getting here in 2018, that the village kind of strayed from that plan. Certain priorities were made for certain subdivisions, certain areas. There's never a perfect approach, right? If we had unlimited budget, absolutely, going after the worst rated roads, improving those makes the most sense. What I can tell you in practice that we've done with the limited budget is say we have a subdivision and there's some dead end roads, there's cul-de-sacs, things like that. We have prioritized the roads that are what we would call like more of an arterial of the subdivision, where most of your traffic is coming to that one road, which is usually your primary entrances and exits. We do try to prioritize that to get the rideability, basically get the most improvement that the residents are going to see and actually feel, to show them that we are trying to stretch your dollars. Unfortunately, like Tyler said, a perfect world, we would start at the backside of the subdivision and then work our way in so that construction traffic isn't driving over those. There's never a perfect way to do it, and we have a limited budget to work with. We also have, any given street could require, and I guess that's another point. Sorry, I should back up. The pricing that you see in the street study is based on, pavement edge to pavement edge. That doesn't include pricing if the village wants to add storm sewer to the project. That doesn't add pricing if there's ditch grading that needs to be done on the side of the road. More recently, we've constructed like concrete radii around some of these intersections for where buses and garbage trucks are cutting over. That we don't assume that for every project, because that's a location by location basis on what we develop these scopes. This is more just a general, here are your recommended practices, here's the price of those roughly, and then we take that data and provide recommendations.
You also had a good plan, in my opinion, of grouping them to take advantage of economies of scale instead of having a contractor go to one of each of 4 quadrants to locate everything in one subdivision that needed, so that we could get more bang for the buck, so to speak.
Yep, just jumping off what Brandon said, like, that's why you see like Chicory Ridge, the 2 entrance streets going into the neighborhood. I mean, 6 years ago, President Gusman was here as well. We were ramped up spending big time on roads. We were spending $1.6, $1.8 million. And then just 2 years ago, we dropped it back down to like hardly anything. So, we were taking an aggressive approach, and that's why you see like Crystal Hills, Sagewood, Chicken Ridge, my neighborhood, all those main roads going in, like Brandon said, to show people, yes, we are ramping up, the efforts to fix the larger roads that have way more traffic on them and stuff like that. But, looking at this plan that they laid out, I really like it. The only critique I would say is I don't think Sprague Road falls into the 89%. But,
You mean rating?
yeah, I mean, according to this little tiny blue line here, it's in 89 and half.
It's 8.9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one way, half out there, half the roads. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to touch on the traffic just a little more too, and, rightfully so, I hear what everybody's saying in terms of like the entrance subdivisions, right, that's obviously gonna be your heavier traffic use. Historically, passenger vehicles aren't what's really gonna cause massive failures. It's the trucks, right? It's the garbage trucks, it's
School
the
buses, I learned.
school buses that slam on the brakes, and that's causing, they can cause waving and pavement, right?
That was the reason for concrete edge treatment in intersections, because
Yeah.
the buses can't make full turns, especially in our neighborhood, because the intersections aren't big enough. They were breaking the intersections off. Why I push for that.
But that is right, and so that can be a consideration if you pick one of these, we looking on these streets nearer to a school, right? We know that's gonna see. Like significant heavy loads, that's where traffic can. Actually, it's
The problem with our roads is back in 1990, whatever. If they were all built subpar, they're not wide enough, developers got to come in here and just build whatever they wanted because we needed housing and.
The
we're
board back
having-
then waived all.
Right, it's nothing any of us did, but that's, now we're dealing.
We deal with it now, make the right choices for the people who are sitting here in 20, right?
And you can't widen the roads. Vickery Ridge, because now you're paying millions of dollars to regrade everything and. It's just not a cost. I like your plan, that's.
So this is 5 year. And then what, then another study in 5 year?
It could be, I mean, the frequency of it should probably be more than every 10 years. I know, Rockford does theirs every 3. I don't think that would be necessary. But 5 years might be a little soon, maybe look at it like in a 7-year, iteration. And right, this maintenance plan, this can be something that it can be a living document too, right? It gets updated every year, right? Because what we can do is the streets that were repaved this year, we can refeed this data now that we have it all tabular format. And give all those streets 100, deduct everything else by 1.2, and then kind of redo the math and redo a plan for the next,
That's the goal for this capital
It's
improvement.
to keep
plan,
it
right?
rolling,
Is to
and
get
so it's a
that,
living document, so not saying, and then. You would want to take a fresh eye and fresh look at the data at some interval, it might not be 5 years, but probably should be sooner. So somewhere.
Cause I think if it's sooner, then you have less chance of. Ones we just don't miss some.
Well, that's why you update it every year. It's not just like, we'll look at it again in 5 years. It's a 5-year plan, but it's updated every year. So if there is a change,
Yeah,
this road
yeah.
becomes worse than this road. You'll do all that.
what's nice too will be that Winchester layer that we get too.
Yep.
That's a big push on that, so hopefully we'll get that all set up where people can see then as it changes, they can check their roads, they can. You can pull roads and you can see what roads are
One
at.
that was drunk or on drugs. Or had some other impairment. And walked in or fell in. Sad to say,
Somebody's gonna unmute themselves.
In one moment while I see who's talking.
No, I know, I mean, roads are always the number one priority for just about every resident. That's the main thing you hear from anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, I really think we should ramp it back up and try to get into that 90%. Within 5 years. That'd be a huge accomplishment. And then maintaining it from there is be way easier than trying to play catch up every single year. It's just my opinion. And crushing crack seal is a nightmare, by the way. All the rubber that comes out.
Also, this is just residential roads too. I mean, that's what we talked about during the
Right.
CIP is RMFT funds we usually generally use for some big projects. I mean, we're doing a lot of big MFT projects previously too.
The major conundrum here is, as pointed out, $500,000 a year just maintains the status quo. So to get to the higher level of bringing more roads up requires greater funding. And our MFT dollars and our $500,000 a year just don't do it. So there really has to be a look at additional funding committed to infrastructure, and that's the other side of the coin.
Good, thanks, man.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Seat back to Brandon.
Number 3, old business, discussion and recommendation of subdivision entrance signs selection for the Chicory Ridge and Hawks Point subdivisions. Pull those up, please. I know.
So here's the Chicory Ridge signs. We got a lot of feedback actually. It was pretty impressed on this back here. So here's all of the Chicory Ridge numbers. This far right one here was by far the highest vote here, 78 votes, and that 57% of all the votes over that one. So that was and a lot of input, a lot of comments just saying they liked F. A lot of people like D as well. I think the one I heard, the negative ones I've heard were mostly with option B, because that was the original Chicory Ridge sign. I don't know that people liked that all that well. So we did have some comments on option B, but otherwise people were pretty well.
So
Pretty good participation and.
that was the same thing when I shared it over on Facebook in the Chicory Ridge group. We got a lot of comments on that as well for F.
Yeah, I shared
E and
it
D
as well.
becoming second.
Shared it on 4 different places on Nextdoor, trying to drive traffic to
Yeah.
it. But no, I really appreciate you doing that. I mean, the public got to put their input in on something. We got to hear about it.
And I think the majority of the public feels option F is the way to go with that.
Right.
Science.
And more particularly the new style, right? The new.
Yeah, which keeps us consistent with what we're looking at the rest of the building.
Looks familiar, like somebody else's subdivision.
Actually, the person who made, the company who made this is the same company who made all the them, actually, so.
Did you get a rendering back for Fox Point, the square?
I don't, you know, I did not get one back to the square version, I have one. I have, but yeah, he will be able to do the same square as well. So I guess really what I need is we'll send this to the board, I'll get the quotes with that based on, assuming we're doing this, based on that version there. We'll get that back and then I will have them also do the quotes for the square Hawks Point as well. I guess what are we thinking there for the Hawks Point one? Do you want to do square? We want to do go to regular, here's the locations, and Brandon and I have looked at this a couple of times and. You know, the issues with the Hawks Point are going to be just the locations on, here's the sewer water maps. So here, it's just, this is where it currently is.
Can't move it across the
You
street.
can sort of see that line right there, where the arrow is, that's the current location.
Of the large one?
But,
Is there
this is this is the only one on Hawks Point.
the larger rectangle one?
This is just a long one, yeah. It's
There's
a long
only
one.
one, okay.
Yeah, that's the only one there. So it's what the original plan would be to move this, you know, make it more visible, moving out a little farther, or where that circle is there. The goal, we do want to make sure we're keeping this out of the right of way, right? It's not, the over roads are ours, but keep it out of the right of way, keep it on that private property, like the rest of the village. We talked to heard back from all of the property owners. Everybody's willing to sign an easement for their locations. It's really just about trying to find a spot where it will actually work. That Thicket Trail, I think that's one where that fence, is that where that fence is down there? I think there's a fence down here.
Yeah.
It's sort of hard to get to that location. Again, we're back off on it into the right of way here, which is, we sort of want to try to avoid having it too much in the right of way. And then. And this is this is our side of it, but
just.
again,
There's still no chance to move it
that's
to
the
the
issue.
other side of the street. You got a picture of it.
is it,
No.
there's Thicket,
There you go. No, sorry.
there's, I don't have a picture of the south side. I think the issue was on that one, I think there is, we can pull it up, I think the issue on that one is that there's I think it's to either a hill over there or I think the fence is right there, I think there's a dog, yeah, it's a fencing like dog.
I think if you go up.
Right onto the edge, right onto the property line there.
Gotcha.
So I think that's the issue on that side. So I think really here it's trimming the bushes, getting the bushes cleared out and getting that moved there, whether it's a new square one or it's the trellis, a trellis one, or if it's the wide one.
Square is.
But you have a picture of that. It's on there. It's the one with the across the street, Mike. It's the one, because you can see the barn. And there's a dog. There's a
right there.
Yeah, that's- yeah, right there.
No.
Back one. It's that one right there.
Yeah.
You're just not seeing on that picture.
Yeah, it's
That's the one to the south.
yeah.
Is it Thicket?
There's there's a fence
Fence,
in the backyard that goes right up to the front.
On the packet, it's the picture's on there.
So would it? Moving that location across the street an option, because to me, looking at it, you're gonna have signs both going this way and none pointing in the southbound direction.
Rotate it out, face out.
Right, but so at that angle, it's going to be facing northbound and then the other sign will be facing northbound as well. You're not going to come southbound and see a sign. You know what I mean?
Right, it has to be.
Yeah, I think yeah. Otherwise, though, it's facing out to the road, though, I guess, really is the thing. It'd be rotated, so it's not necessarily facing north or south, it's facing.
It's facing straight out.
Just straight out.
Right away entrance.
As people come to.
This last year or something.
That's right across the street, right there.
Considering a trellis for that one.
That's what you gotta tell me, yeah.
Yes.
That's some larger trellis. There's that.
Correct.
Prairie Ridge.
It's, if we both can measure it out there, make sure we have the right sizes, that's the issue, is just the size. But once we know point the trellises, we'll measure it, we'll get either the smaller or the larger trellis size. Do you want all trellises coming into Hawks Point?
Yes.
I would think so. To me, I know it's saying we're okay with a smaller square sign, but I think it would be more appropriate to have the same signs. So they match, they're not.
Is Hawks Point one word or two?
Hawks Point is spelled like that on the planet, so
2 words.
2 words,
That's where.
E at the end of points
A
and
little tricky.
there you go, and not at the end of the.
Chicory Ridge. Yes, you could split them. It's really.
It's no, we've got a sign for it. It'd be Hawks Point, up and down or
Yeah.
whatever, and temperature, and then the hawk actually would be on the other side.
Square.
Square.
Perfect.
It's not a problem doing a square sign, it's just,
Make it so.
so we want to have, I'll go get quotes then
Can you
for,
get a quote for doing 2 or 1 more sign exactly like that with the trellises? And then could you also get a quote for square signs? So they match, so we can know how much
Yeah.
either way. Yeah, imagine it could be a ton, I think it's only 1 other sign.
so I'm gonna get 3 Hawks Point signs?
No,
2 Hawks.
it'd be 2, so just
We're
one
both, I
more.
guess that's one,
I
That's my
wanna see the
too.
quote for
That one.
another one that size with 2 trellises, so you already have that one, so we don't have to pay for a sign, right? And then quotes for 2 square signs to replace that one and
With 2 trellises.
putting a new one.
this would not have a trellis sign, the wide one would have a trellis, I think it's too wide for that. I mean, that's be a giant trellis you're gonna have, it'd be a giant
Well,
wide.
Prairie
trellis.
Ridge has a large one, I mean, I don't know the size of it.
Yeah.
I don't know the size of Prairie Ridge's either.
I think it's gonna look,
Maybe it makes
off,
more sense.
I think
to
square, I think we
Replace
do
that
the
with a
square.
square one.
for your trellises, I think you might do a square.
Beatrice did give us permission to put it in the back of the subdivision since the residents paid for this one.
Yeah.
He'll put it on the new apartments and entering Hawks Point.
Yeah, and this is the residence design side.
So no problem.
Yeah, I talked to Josh
I'm not
about
throwing
that.
it out.
It's that one then at the other spot.
So then this one would be, and probably on different, obviously proposed, right, but this is a good condition. This would be at the entrance, to the new file
I'll
six.
call for that. All right.
What do you envision as the resting place of the poles? A bed or just stuck in the grass?
A flower bed.
I think
A mulch,
anything
flower?
easiest for the homeowner to maintain.
I mean, I guess I
How do
would,
you want
like in
them
Chicory Ridge, I would ask the homeowner.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it makes more sense to have mulch, cause then they could just mow a circle.
Blow around and it's full.
Be a lot easier to maintain versus trying to weed whack around.
So a border and a mulch bed. Border, let's say,
Yeah, and then
and a
it's-
mulch bed.
if the neighborhoods wanna come up with sort of planting and do it
It's up to them.
themselves, that's up to them, they don't have it city.
So we have two square signs of both. For both, so we order signs total with trellis.
With mulch beds.
That's not good trellis. And we got, I just got the quotes for that. We'll get one more narrowed down. I think it was say 800 was what we paid last time. For the inside, I haven't worked back it, but the costs were in here or something, but. So I think we said about $2,900, $3,000 for the sign, I think say like 2,900, but we'll get if we're doing multiple signs, we'll work out the just we'll just count on that too, but. That's roughly what it's gonna be, 3,000, and then say roughly $1,000 for trellis. Mulch, whatever else in here. I think that was slightly higher. He's just sort of estimating based on our last installations. That's roughly what you're looking at per sign then.
The colors, the signs and the print,
The purple and
white background? Is that what that is?
Ours is.
it's like this, the Chicory Ridge one is essentially like, it's like a light purple, like a violet lavender with a darker, a darker lavender really, I mean, purple on purple, but. I think that's. And then I got some comments about that too. We got some comments, at least on the survey about there's pulling from the chicory plant. And
Well,
that's where the circle comes from.
Mike, does that make sense to have? You know, cohesive signs for your neighborhood versus
mean like
one
that
big one and
once?
one small one?
Oh, you have to have, yeah.
So if you want it to look
Basic.
the same, right?
Yeah, I think.
Chicory will be
the same.
Just like yours. Do we need to vote on this and move it to the board officially so we can?
Sure.
That would be appropriate.
I think we already did it.
Oh, check the
I wanna make sure we do the motion and
Maybe
move
it's
it to the
a little
board.
Yes,
Technically,
We have a
Not
vote.
midnight yet.
We have a motion from John,
Okay.
Second,
second from Justin.
But to repeat, what is this? How many signs?
so it'd
It
be
is 2 signs for Chicory Ridge, 2 signs for North Point.
option F. for
Option F for Chicory Ridge. We don't have a design for Fox Point. Yeah, we do.
Well, we do, it's gonna be that, but just square.
A similar design, just so clear.
Bright,
Yes.
me,
Yes.
Lot,
Yes.
Babcock,
Yes.
Rhoda,
Yes.
and Simon.
Yes.
Thank you.
New business, number 4, discussion and recommendation of contracting for engineering and construction management services for the Riverside Park Pavilion replacement.
So got the requests back for that. I think weeks ago we presented, we had Mike from McMahon get the initial survey, or initial structural survey. We asked, the request was to have Fairground proposal as well. You've seen the proposals, Fairground was exactly $200 less than McMahon. But I guess I just need some direction on what you would like to see on here. They're both about the same price. They both came in $30,000 for the Riverside Park Pavilion engineering, et cetera.
That's
So it looks like that was pretty close. Obviously, McMahon got pretty close on that. So same as Fairgrounds.
I have. Sorry, Brandon, you're right here, so I have to ask the question, because I'm just a little confused, because when we left the overview and background on this. Originally, earlier, it was said about 10,000 for design when you put together a whole bid package. Now we're at 17. I know things go up, but it's design, it's.
So the original estimate was based off of the village working directly with a contractor and it was incorporating some structural design reviews essentially of the manufacturer's recommendations at the time that the manufacturer that I was told could maybe provide a prefabricated structure, that they with recommendations for like a foundation footing design. We recommend that always that a structural engineer actually looks at those recommendations and signs off on them. So that was the original intent, is that most of that work and coordination would be done in-house, kind of by the village. Once we got to this point where it's a new pavilion, there's some minor electrical work that needs to be accounted for. So I would assume that also, that adds to the cost, and then construction observation. That's big, I think between the two quotes, roughly $10,000, that original estimate, that was all assumed to be, at least at my understanding at the time of putting together that cost estimate, was that work would be done in-house to keep it as minimal cost as possible.
So do we have designs of this building?
That's what this is all, yeah, it's gonna be a replacement, and we're not talking about a, fancy.
Well, I-
building. Remember
it was just
replacing,
gonna be a-
replacing directly what we had up there.
Yeah, well, that was a shelter
Yeah.
house, not a pre-engineered metal building.
But the,
No.
Correct.
So what do we, what is this?
This is based on a shelter house. This was built on replacing what we had, identically what we
A
had,
metal building?
not a metal building.
Prefabricated.
Yeah, it's we had a pavilion down there.
As soon as you come into the, it's right to
I
the
showed a
side.
picture of the other.
The open air.
Open air.
Not there anymore.
Yeah, it was like just a roof with some beams holding up.
Yeah.
That's what.
But I guess like I get confused with metal building, I'm thinking.
How four sides.
So you're looking for feedback, I would assume we would go with the lower bid, which is 30,000, it's $200 more. I know that this originally was just bid out to McMahon, and then we included Fairground, which is our engineer of records. We've signed to work with these guys in-house. So I would recommend that we would go work for Fairground.
Okay.
Motion.
Second.
So Black,
Yep.
Babcock,
Yes.
Mead,
Yes.
Simon,
Yes.
Plot,
Yes.
Rhoda,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Number 5, review and recommendation of RFP responses for professional design services. Porter Park Phase 2 of the OSLIT grant.
Sent out the proposals. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look through them. All different, range from Angus Young Associates, 97,000. Hutchinson Engineering was 23,000, then Fair Grant was $187,000. Different scopes, all accomplish the OSLIT grant, the project site we have there. I've not brought anybody in to talk yet. I want to hear from, before we do that, I want to make sure I hear from the board of what direction you're looking at. If it's just gonna be, Fairgram, then, we'll do a Fairgram. If it's gonna be, more of a, if you want to hear from the engineers, want to have a proposal, have them come in and explain their proposals, we can do that.
I'd like to hear from Tyler about their 187 while he's here. Why?
What is the bids for? I mean, what are the prices that we've seen? I haven't seen any design, like renderings or anything. So, I mean, I know what the grant amount is and I know what the bids money worth, but I didn't see any.
I would pull up a site plan, but we don't actually have a site plan for it, but because the site plan we submitted was not for the actual project. But this is for the Porter Park. This is gonna be for adding the back row of holes back behind. This is all in that small corner at Porter Park.
Right.
Right, the annex over there. So it's adding another row of holes in the very back in the woods. It's connecting across, there's a creek, sort of a dry creek at this point. There's a creek that goes across there. It's connecting the main part of the park or the additional park across that creek to where the trail is gonna go. That's during the bike path extension. That's and then the last sort of main issue is it's gonna be adding it's like an adult fitness court. It's adding that in here. And it's also, the last thing is to add a restroom, prefab or pre-constructed, whatever restroom, on the back part of that, fitness section.
Getting on the proposal from Hutchinson, I believe that there's a rendering of kind of what they're talking about.
Yeah, I just seen some examples from different, in this places that I didn't actually see.
Well, that's just showing you the work that they've done.
Yeah, which doesn't
They're
really.
just giving you their background.
Yeah.
Why they're
It was more of a,
qualified to do it, that's what. it is.
yes, but I didn't actually see what they were gonna do.
Yeah, that's part of that Oslet.
We do have the, somewhere, I don't know, but we do have a design. Essentially with the Oslet proposal that we've sent to the state and all that.
We do, however, I can pull it, I'll pull that plate plan out right now,
To give you an
but
idea
that,
of what.
yeah,
was
generally what we're
being
talking
looked at.
about. I do have. It's similar to this, it's not this though. So this is what we submitted. So this is so this is what we're talking about, it's this area here. This is Porter Park, cabins over on that side. It's black here, but, so this is what we're talking about. It's sort of this, it's a restroom. In theory, I guess, here-ish in this area. It's a,
Should be a newer one. 'Cause
this is the one we submitted to the state, so I pulled this from the state.
So we do have the dog park area.
No, this is, yeah, well,
So.
the Oslet grant narrative that was submitted to the state. Yes, correct. That was a good narrative, what we were approved for is what those sort of 4 or 5 items I just talked about. The site plan, that's why I don't have a site plan to show you. The site plan that we submitted to the state is the site plan here, which is the prior submittal that was submitted before. That we did not get the Oslet grant for. So this gives you a general idea, but this is not really what
We
we're,
didn't send a new site plan.
yes,
with
correct.
the
We did not send you.
second application.
This is what we sent, because this is what I pulled it from the state, I was looking for documents, so. That's why it was sort of hard even to do sort of the proposals, when we generally know what we're doing, right?
Well, I
It's gonna
remember
be,
seeing a design because we had the
Cross
parking
here.
lot coming in from the south instead, and then there was gonna be a restroom area in the center, kind of where that center circle is.
Mhm.
And then there was gonna be a fitness area kind of near that. And then addition poles and then a bridge, which I don't think we're going to be able to do at all. Throughout this process, because of the cost of one. But-
well, I guess in the bridge, yeah, I'm curious about the bridge here, just. getting
Well, the
permitting
time
for it,
frame
too.
alone for the bridge, I don't think we're even gonna make it by time to spend some.
Well, and then the description of the bridge too, I'm talking to Brandon about that, we're trying to figure out exactly based on the description, what it was even going to be, what we were even talking about, whether it was that, I think we were talking about whether it was crossing over here or crossing over, there's sort of a creek that goes this way too. Or, yeah, roughly that way, roughly over there. And there's the other one here, so I think the intention was to cross over this to this.
So the narrative suggests that the
Yeah.
bridge would cross to then connect to the future
Into the
Perryville
bike
path.
Perryville bike path. here.
The initial conversations, I think that was probably back in 2021 when we first applied. I had heard of the bridge actually crossing more to the north side to get to the
There's a
unaccessed,
yeah.
back
This back area
area
here is where.
for the disc golf association. That then changed in the application
Yeah.
process. And yeah, that scope was changed.
How long, what's it take throughout the design and getting, Army Corps of Engineers, what's the time frame on actually putting a bridge in? Because
Yeah, time is ticking.
We're gonna have to work with them, we'll work with the state to.
Yeah, I can tell you in our experience, we did this for a box culvert on the Love Road project. I do not believe that we received comments back for 9.
It'll be a while.
yeah,
So I don't know if the IDNR will advance, like pull those permit submissions to the top of their pile because.
Well, it's nice that we're working with, IDNR is the one who does this grant.
Yeah.
So, working with them as we go. The approvals on it. And also, I think right here, isn't this where's that culvert at here? Oh, back here. Aren't they working right now on
Widening,
permitting this too? I think they had, the county has to re-permit or redesign it,
yep,
right?
redesign and yep.
So there's some delays there that are gonna be there anyway as they work through even getting this to connect into something, so.
was the parking lot submitted with this as well?
Parking lot was not part of the Oslet grant. It was referred to, which is federal, but it's not a Oslet grant funded part of the project. We have those plans too, and those plans we've got ready to go too, but unfortunately, those don't count. So, the the adult recreation thing will be, we've got those plans already done, that's what's nice about
We
that.
have a grant for that from the
Yeah.
solar field, right? What we had planned, weren't they gonna put $30,000 towards it or something, or towards the park?
15 or something, but there was something else, Joe.
Yeah, we have-
We were able to
We have,
take it.
yeah, we had additional 50,000 for that too, so we have the equipment's ready to go.
In storage.
They already
Paid
have.
for it.
Yeah,
We already got-
yeah,
And it expanded beyond the original 3 or 4 because of the availability of the program.
So that's-
America or
yeah.
something.
so that one's set,
Then there is
restroom back
also
here
the-
somewhere, there is water that comes back across already, which is, or the sewer comes up to here roughly. And then the water, I think, is here. It's pushing that through.
Plus, there's also the question about the original parking lot was large. Is that now something that is needed and where would it go? Since the number of exercise stations has increased.
Definitely need a large, the large curb parking lot, I don't know how large, but. I
We
mean,
can fit in there.
yeah, whatever we can fit because of the trunk or treat event that we have. That
I mean,
was-
it
that
will
was the whole
never-
point of doing the larger.
It will never do trunk or treat, like, you know, but yeah, no, I mean, it should be designed for the day-to-day use of it.
Yeah.
For it,
I guess if you can still open up grass area
yeah,
to.
yeah.
Maybe have. Carve out part of the curb or something.
Just for clarification, because I know this project started, I think, before we were here.
All of us, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the grant is a total of $531,328, right?
Yep.
15% has, no more than 15% can be used for design work.
Correct.
So these design bids we have, only 79,699 is covered. We have to cover the rest.
And it's
Well, it's
Matching.
it's a matching
So, yeah.
funds grant, so
so roughly that, yeah.
we have to spend $500 some odd thousand too in order to get. money.
Yeah.
It's a 50-50 deal, pretty much. So we spend all the money up front and then they reimburse us after it's done,
In year X.
That's.
but that's how it works.
Right.
I just want
But
clarification.
you just have to be prepared when you start the project, you're going to be spending all out of local funds
Yeah, you have to
and
be
waiting,
Prepared
X
to
number
spend
of years.
$1.2 million and then
wait for the state.
they reimburse you once you prove that the project's done.
According to the mayor of Chesney, waited 5 years for his share of a grant.
It's nice that they can put deadlines on us, but we can't put on them. That's like.
So I'm just gonna ask, what would you like me to have
Well,
people come in?
Well, they're here, can he tell us? How to go over the 187?
Yeah, I can, yeah, and I'm sure, you know, looking at the numbers, there's a little shock on where ours was at. And one thing I'll speak to is, right, we did do the previous parking lot design on this site, so we are familiar with this site. You know, I don't want to speak to what all the other firms had specifically in their scope, but just want to highlight that what we put in our scope is truly what we believe is going to be necessary to advance a project and lead a successful project. You have some significant site constraints here that may not look like it from the surface, but majority of this site is not just floodplain, but floodway. That is going to create some permitting issues when it comes to grading of the site and when it comes to the pedestrian bridge. You know, in our number alone, we have about $20,000 worth of hydraulic and hydrology analysis that we think the IDNR is going to require to permit a bridge. You know, some pedestrian bridges, you can permit under what they call a statewide permit, which is pretty much just a general permit. And as long as you comply with their requirements, you know, they kind of rubber stamp your design. We do not anticipate that's going to be the case here. It's not a rural stream. We're surrounded by development. Typically, those permits apply only to rural areas. And we believe the floodway is going to be a factor here. The other thing is, you know, the RFP noted, it's, you know, thinking it'll be a prefabricated bridge. We do anticipate there's going to be some design effort for the abutments of that bridge because we're in floodway. So we do have some cost in there as well to get some geotechnical borings to know what we're dealing with for soils so that that footing can be constructed properly. So the bridge is a pretty large component. I think about 55,000 of our fee is is just tied up in that bridge design alone, bidding and the hydraulic modeling that we believe is going to be necessary to get that bridge permitted. The other thing, we included costs for stormwater modeling overall for the site. Now, we're not creating a lot of impervious area, but we are creating some. And so we're gonna have to figure out a plan to deal with the conveyance of that stormwater with the floodway. Obviously, the county's doing some improvements on there right away. They have to upgrade, just give you an idea of, the permitting requirements here, right? They're gonna have to upgrade their bridge to nowhere out there just to accommodate a bike path. The bridge that's been there for years and was for vehicles, right? So that's how requirements can change in the permitting you're looking at dealing with when you're in a floodway area. Other item I'll point out is, about 45,000, I believe, of our fee there too is for the construction side of things, so not the design alone. We anticipate with the bridge and with the grading that it's gonna, while it won't be like a full-time, we'll need somebody on site during construction, that it's gonna average out to about 4 hours a day. We're gonna have to have somebody here just making sure it's being constructed in the proper way. So that was an item we wanted to factor in too, because we didn't want to put in a low dollar amount for construction inspection. And then once this gets to bid, right, we're coming back and asking for more funds from you to make sure that it's being built properly. So that's what I'll speak to in our proposal, is that we really tried to look at this from all angles with our knowledge of the site and knowing our extensive experience with OSLAD projects, which we have our references in our RFP document, that we have a team that we can do all of this in-house, right? We have landscape architects, we have structural engineers who do the bridge design in-house, we have stormwater modelers that can do all the H&H study, the hydraulic and hydrology studies in-house. And we have the construction arm too, that can do the inspection side on the back end. So we try to look at this holistically of what all items we believe needed to be in this proposal to make this a successful project in the village.
So question I have, you could have somebody underestimating the scope and somebody overestimating the scope. So in a complex project like this where, it's really hard to make an apples to apples comparison. I guess my question is that, and this is a naive question, but if you actually come in and let's say somebody comes in at 97 and they end up being more than what Fairgraham bid at the end, that could happen, right? I mean, they could just say, we need more money to finish the scope, right? There's no guarantees, right? You can't guarantee, you make a vendor say, okay, you gotta come in at this budget, and you're not gonna get any more money, or, let's say.
I mean, the exceptions that Tyler's pointing out, I mean, are the exceptions and some of those other, some of the proposals, right? That's a lot of geotechnical part of it. I think it's a big, or the, not geotechnical,
I guess what I'm trying to say, let's say Hutchinson came in at 123, but then in the end, they end up, they come to us for $50,000 more, we have to pay it. Yeah,
They
right.
come in for their service. I mean, they come in for, here's what we are, scope of services. You would have to,
Right.
if there's something in there that they say it's outside of the scope of this project, we would have to, we would have
So
them.
it would seem to me by looking at these numbers that scope of services are not aligned between the three bids, right? Like, they're looking at different scopes.
We had till March, or was it April, to
It'll end up being, it's gonna be, the original one was,
April is when we have to spend money by, or
we're gonna have to work with the state to get permitting, right? I mean, there's more permitting than we. Makes me cheaper, so. Well, it'll be later than that. It'll be spring, summer, we'll be at this.
but as far as our OSLA money, our deadline, for that,
Yeah.
we're gonna try to push that.
It'll be
back,
pushed
is what
back,
you're
yeah,
saying.
that's pushed
Okay.
back, yeah.
That would be my other.
Yeah, there's no way that,
We have somebody familiar with the site
yeah,
and
Do they allow that? I mean, are we gonna be dinged if we try pushing it back or?
we'll have to work with them. But yeah, I mean, no, they'll have grant permission to it, but they'll have the permission to do it back,
so
but
it's not a
not.
guarantee that.
I
they'll
know.
push all that.
I mean, it's part of our, they adjust it, they can adjust it, it's part of our grant.
Tyler, what was the scope of the land analysis, whatever category it falls into, topographical survey or geotechnical whichever it falls into, that your firm used when you designed the large parking lot. Is there an overlap here of, did we pay for some of these elements first when the parking lot was designed?
Yes, what's been surveyed right now that we have is essentially everything you can see that's not wooded. So, we did not include fee to resurvey that portion. So what's left to be done is the hard part, right? Doing topo survey of wooded areas is difficult. You pretty much have to wait till the leaves drop to be able to do it properly, and it just is more time intensive. So, we did not have to, for the parking lot, to my knowledge, we did not have geotech borings, but that wouldn't really apply because to do the bridge design, you need to get the borings where you believe the landings are gonna be, the abutments are going to be for the bridge. So that's what's included in that scope item would be the remainder of the topographical survey for the wooded area, which again, we believe is going to be, have to be fairly accurate for the hydraulic modeling portions of the work. And then the geotech to obtain the borings where the bridge is landing, which to our understanding has not been fully established yet. So we would need to get some supplemental information.
Is there any way to get a realistic time frame on when be able to get all this back from Army Corps of Engineers and all that? Because I don't want just that part of the project to hold this whole thing up and we lose our grant. Because, you know, it might be something we just say, we're not gonna go with that portion, and if it's $50,000 of your project 7, I mean, right there's a savings. Maybe later on down the road, like a bridge, but
I think we need to, I think once we hire the consultant, I think that's the first thing to do is sit down and go through that and figure out if this project's not even timeline, but even if this project's realistic on some of it, right? And I don't think that was looked at, the bridge portion of it, right? So I think that's gonna be.
well, we knew
the
that
first step.
going into our
Yeah.
grant that it would take a lot of time to do that. We've just kicked the can down the road. Now here we are, 6 months, we need to spend the money. So.
So, what's the recommendation actually, the other years come in, the other engineering firms come in, or?
I mean, I guess there's a question, is this something we're gonna look at? I mean, do you have a relationship with Fairgram? I mean, it does cover the whole works of it. I mean, if we're concerned about those exceptions that are in the other proposals, because there will be additional costs on at least some of them.
I'm comfortable saying to go with Fairground just for time's sake, and they already know the site, they've already surveyed 75% of it. Just at this point, it's time's sake, and I don't want us to lose the grant. And then, because if you lose the grant and you don't spend that money,
You don't get it.
you don't get it back, 1, and 2, when you reapply for one, there's just, we're just gonna be like, we're not gonna give it to you because you don't spend the money.
So you anticipate that the other two firms might come up with 90 or 50,000 in additional costs, that eventually it would equal what you see as a more comprehensive Fairgram list.
There will be additional costs, yeah. The question is, $90,000 additional? But
In the end, you don't know, but like Justin said, time is the essence.
Well, and knowing that they're gonna come with more costs, and Joe's confirming that, yes, there will be more costs, so it's. So whether it's 5,000.
You can start on this like right away.
So I think if that's the direction, I think we send this to the board version, I guess it's released. but-
I'll make a motion that we send to the board approval of design services related to the Porter Park Phase 2 with Fairground.
Let me interrupt 1 second, please. One final question at a time.
Sure.
You mentioned that this is comprehensive, not going to nail you to the wall. As best as you can see, there are no unforeseen things that might be in your proposal.
I mean, yeah, as best as we can see based on the scope that was presented to us in the RFP, and that's all we can base it on, right? And our knowledge of the OSLAD grant process and these projects, that yes, this includes what we believe will be necessary now, can we guarantee that nothing's gonna come up during permitting or anything? But again, to that matter, maybe if something does come up during permitting, to your point on the bridge, maybe, that gets determined down the road that this isn't worth it, but, you never can quite guarantee that with permitting and all that, but we had multiple individuals in our office that are experienced with these projects look at this proposal and vet this before this went out the door. This wasn't just thrown together, that we believe this is everything that's gonna be taken based on the scope that we've seen and the RFP that we were given. That,
Thank you.
And if the bridge isn't
We
included,
have a motion pending and we really
Yes.
need to get a second.
Before we start discussing.
Second.
All right, now we have a second. We can keep talking. That's fine, but we shouldn't have a motion pending there. Okay. thank you.
I just wanted to say, if the bridge isn't included, then that price would change.
You would determine that throughout the permitting process, okay, this is gonna take 14
Forever.
months and we're not gonna be able to meet the time.
and that's why we provided the breakdown of the various phases in our documents, you can see what those individual costs are.
And I'm assuming that having that professional relationship with you, you'd be like, this probably isn't worth it at this point. We don't wanna charge you 50 some odd $1,000.
Is that something, is that something you can tackle like right away to find out, how long current, or a guess on how long?
To me, that's, you talk about projects, the critical path items, the items that can't slide a day, to put
That-
jeopardize and finish to the project. To me, it's that initial coordination for the modeling and the bridge. Yeah, that's the critical path. item.
That way we can, yes or no. It kind of gives us a. Any more discussion, wrap it up, let's vote, please.
Mead,
Yes.
Simon,
Yes.
Plot,
Yes.
Rhoda,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Babcock.
I'm gonna say no, only because. Joe, did you do the research on all these bids on Vance, and there's 3 bids, and there's some pretty reasonable, all these locations that Vance presented, I'm familiar with many of those that they've done. So if you did this and you're comparing the prices, why is there so much disparity if what Tyler's here saying is, here's all these.
Look
things-
through it, it's the exceptions, right? It's the exceptions out of them. They're saying we're relying, the village will provide the.
But I mean, didn't they know this, and they're submitting the bids, here's what it has to cover?
They did, and it said their proposals were based on these other things will be done by.
I'm gonna say no, not because
Yeah.
But in all fairness to the other 2 companies, they're not here representing like Tyler is. And in this case, okay, we go back to, we don't have enough money for the roads, but now we're gonna spend $100,000 without really looking into something, then we have a relationship. What the other thing is, as a village, maybe we ought to be passing around, because in our meeting, when we did vote for Fairgrand, we suggested that we should be looking at other engineering firms to spread the wealth and also get a comparison. So because we were gonna, in a year from now, we're gonna decide on again. So to me, it's like, we're maybe missing an opportunity to try somebody else that would give us some competitiveness here right now, instead of, with all due respect, Tyler, you're here, they're not here representing, we don't know what they would say. Proverbs, you listen to one man until the other person speaks. Anyway.
Motion passed. You got everybody, right? Okay. Real quick public comment, if you guys want, I talked with Ann, Halloween. Coming up, trunk or treat, if y'all wanna donate some hours and some time, go ahead and please see Ann.
I just want to say, before we end up here, the water tower, I know it's probably more important, not important, but it's obvious to me. It's not gonna have the name Roscoe on it anymore. And I just felt like when people go by on I-90, they won't be seeing our name on that water tower. I just thought, that's too bad, but I guess that's just what the board in the past voted
That's
for,
what
no
this
logo,
board-
and now
That's
that
what this board decided.
I didn't know that there was gonna be, the no logo was, no name at all. But anyways, so people won't know that we're here, I guess, if they drive by on I-9.
Mike, you have some on this.
Oh, I'm sorry, my name's Harold Bone, I live at 109 Wade Meadow Sweet Lane, in Roscoe here in the subdivision.
I just wanted some clarification from some things that were stated. When it comes to the signs in the subdivision, Mr. Broda, I believe you said you posted it on Facebook in a private group, is that correct?
The Chicory Ridge Group on
So
Facebook.
407 members in that,
Yes,
is that correct? And then you got 78 respondents?
I believe so.
It was.
The responses that we,
There was also, people
Here.
commented, but there was also a link to the poll that was on
Yeah,
next
it all,
door.
it all went to the
So-
village.
It went to the villages poll on
the
that,
poll
correct?
that,
It was
what
just
was
a-
put up here was the public villages next door page.
Correct. So my next question is, it wasn't posted on the Facebook page, it was only posted on the next door page.
Not on the villages, no.
Correct.
That's correct.
That's
The reason, so the reason for that usually is because on Facebook, you can't control the audience that's seeing it.
If
If you can get people-
correct, if you don't pay for it, you can't control that, correct?
Right.
Just like next door, run same way. So I'm wondering why. In one medium of social media, you have one message, and then in another medium, you have another message. Because in next door, you posted it to get feedback, and then in Facebook, you didn't do that. So you're looking for consistency and feedback from the community, yet you're not being consistent on how and where you're putting the messages.
Well, it was posted on Facebook, I posted it, and
You did personally, but as a village, as a committee.
correct.
it
But
didn't get-
it would
It
drive
was
traffic
just to
from
the-
Rockford would be voting on it, it'd be all kinds of people voting on it at that point, it wouldn't.
But don't you want that feedback? Because that's why you pull it.
From a resident in Rockford? No, I
Not for
don't.
this. This was
I
for the
want-
subdivision.
I want the people who
Feedback
live there.
from the village, not people in Rockford, Winchester Park.
So I am on next door. I get stuff from Caledonia, from Belvedere, from Rockford. And I put my information in there. They cannot lock that down. It's within their rules and regulations. Look at it. I'm just wondering where the inconsistency is coming from. That you're putting it on one platform but not the other, and you expect the community member to know, hey, go to next door and check this out. Or go to Facebook and look that up. If you're not consistent, you're not gonna get consistent feedback from anybody. And that's why there is a sector of the community that doesn't understand where to go to get information. And I'm the managing editor for the Rockland Roscoe News. Every single week, we get 6 to 10 emails. What's going on? Where do I get the information? I point them to your website every day of the week, If they.
Our
go to social
website,
Media,
our website will have all of our village official, village announcements, village events, as Roscoe.gov.
meetings and things like
And
that.
then our next door, Roscoe, Village of Roscoe next
Official
door
next-
is the
that's
official.
where they should go.
I know there's other unofficial ones out that people have posting, but that the Roscoe ones, the official Roscoe ones are through our next door. Our village of Roscoe website.
So point them to next door, not to Facebook.
No, he's saying it's on our village website.
Our village website.
Send them to our
Yeah, send me the website, any event
That's
that's happening.
about the signs that was on the website, on the village.
That was a survey that was just directed to the neighborhoods. That was a different situation. That was directed only to the Chicory Ridge residents. That was only to
Okay,
Chicory.
okay. Just trying my mind how I'm going to write that so that someone within Village of Roscoe is gonna understand that.
This was
survey
only
was
for-
for those within the Chicory Ridge subdivision,
Correct.
but you put it on next door, which is the more than.
It was only sent to Chicory Ridge residents.
Just two.
It was limited to Chicory Ridge residents.
That's not how next door works.
It is.
It is.
There are tabs that you.
I can provide,
I understand that, but that's not how, I just looked at it. That's not how it worked.
we have an agency, I guess I don't know if you've got a government agency account. We have an agency account, so we can submit just to individual neighborhoods. Yeah, I mean, I don't bring this argument here, but this was to Chicory Ridge only. That's.
And to
that's
answer your
who
question,
responded.
just with the Chicory Ridge subdivision group on Facebook, my comment, I just pulled it up so I could really reflect on what you said. Just wrote, not sure if everyone saw this on Nextdoor. In the comments, I posted a picture of the signs, here's the link. Tuesday's the meeting, come talk if you have any concerns.
I think that any, you want to get the residents, but I think putting it in your paper, we want to get as much input.
Well, so,
And so, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, at this point, you guys have walked so far down the path that the feedback Is it gonna change anything you did? You decided you're gonna have square signs or whatever. But I'm just looking at it from my perspective as someone who lives in the community to get the information.
Yeah, we
If
want,
it's the website, then I'll go to the website. If it's next door, specifically next door, that's where I'll go. And that's where I will then point our readers as well.
yeah, I don't think it's too late. I mean, you can contact any of us, contact people. If we get the word out to Chicory Ridge residents or Hawks Point residents, we would love to have that feedback. I mean, we've been working on the sign thing for a long time now, and it really is a benefit to the region, to the community. You know, I live in a subdivision where we put our own sign up, we pay for it. The fact that you're actually having the village working with the community, run a sense of community, so everybody has a sign. So obviously, we want to make sure we get people to vote on it and not people from Chesney Park or wherever, you know, people that actually live there. So whatever the best way of getting it there is what we should do. And there's, you know, I don't know if there's a wrong way or right way, but I mean, eventually we're gonna be able to get a poll of what they want. And I think that if all of a sudden there comes a surge of people in here saying we don't want the square sign or whatever different sign, then I'm sure you guys would be okay with it. But we just want to work with you to make sure we get that information out.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
One last real quick one, I want to give a little pat on the back to Sam here. I'm going to read you a text that I got from a resident on Chestnut Street. What a wild morning of speeders, crazy. I hope they can get out here in the AM and take control. I really appreciate that you and the chief came out. That has never happened in my 26 years of living here. Thanks so much, and be sure to let the chief know that. I'm here to help out now too. Got some emails that got from a gentleman that he increased traffic along Chestnut. Sent one out with oodles and oodles of information, and the resident actually loved it, so I thought I'd share that for a high note. Thanks, Sam. Thank you. No need for executive session, adjournment. Aye. So moving. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Super deal. Thank you for the long night. Yeah.